In a world full of interactions, lively parties, and shared laughter, how can anyone feel so alone? The emptiness that persists even when everything seems perfect on the outside is not a reflection of what is missing externally, but rather a manifestation of what has been lost within oneself. What if, instead of a sign of inadequacy, this feeling of distance were an urgent call from a deeper self, crying out to be rediscovered? Have you ever found yourself in an environment surrounded by people, perhaps at a family dinner or a lively celebration, and yet felt a strange sense of disconnection? It's not that there is a lack of company or human warmth, but there is a silent absence within you, something that is not visible to the eyes of others but weighs heavily on the soul. It is not physical loneliness, but the loneliness of the unrecognized essence, of the being that hides beneath the surface of social interactions. We try to fill this void with more friends, more achievements, more entertainment, hoping that the external noise will drown out the internal sense. But the truth is that no matter how much we search outside, the emptiness remains. How can we explain loneliness when we have everyone around us? It does not come from a lack of people, but from a disconnection with our own being. It is like being in the middle of an ocean and still not being able to find the water that quenches our thirst. This silent anguish is not a defect, but a message, an internal call to look within. From an early age, we are taught to hide our essence in order to be accepted, to fit in with external expectations. We begin to build a persona, a role we play to please others, whether in childhood, with the search for parental approval, or in adolescence, with the desire to belong to a group. Over time, these small concessions to our being accumulate, creating a growing distance between who we really are and what we show to the world. The world may even applaud the version we present, but deep down, our genuine self remains waiting for recognition, invisible to others and often to ourselves. The crucial question is, when will we stop to look inside and recognize who we really are? Perhaps when we understand that loneliness does not come from a lack of others, but from a lack of connection with our own truth, we will be able to answer. The real cause of loneliness does not lie in a lack of affection or companionship, but in the absence of the love we should offer ourselves. As we stop listening to ourselves in the name of conformity and social acceptance, we distance ourselves from our essence. Recognizing this disconnection is the fundamental step in dispelling the fog that obscures our inner vision. This process should not be seen as blaming the world around us, but as an awareness that at some point we stopped listening to ourselves. The good news is that even with lost time, there is always a possible return. The journey back to ourselves can be long and challenging, but the fruits of this search are valuable and transformative. The first sign of this reconnection begins when we have the courage to admit in silence that even though we are surrounded by others, we still feel lonely. This feeling is not an endpoint, but the beginning of a new perception of our reality. You may have already felt as if you were acting, as if life were a stage and you needed to play a certain role just to be accepted, or, at the very least, not to be rejected. This behavior is a reflection of the persona, a concept studied by Carl Jung. The persona is a layer we use to adapt to the world. It acts as a bridge between our true identity and social demands. In itself, it is not a negative thing, as it often allows us to navigate everyday life more easily. However, the problem arises when we identify so much with this mask that we begin to forget who we really are. Feeling the pressure to be the perfect model, whether as a child, professional, or friend, is an experience that many of us know well. From an early age, we are conditioned to deny certain facets of our personality. Be strong, don't cry, don't be inconvenient, don't show weakness. These messages, internalized over the years, lead us to hide parts of our true nature, afraid of not being accepted for our vulnerability, our interests, or our different opinions. The fear of rejection acts as a powerful fuel in this process. How many times have you found yourself agreeing with something in a conversation, even though you disagree internally, just to avoid the discomfort of confrontation? Maria's story illustrates this dilemma well. As a brilliant lawyer, she is admired for her competence and professional rigor. But hidden from everyone, there is another side to Maria. She loves to paint watercolors and compose delicate poetry, activities that for her are too weak for her public image. Maria hides these passions so well that even her closest friends are unaware of their existence. During the day, she represents the model of logic and firmness, but at night, in the silence of her home, emptiness sets in. She feels loneliness not because of her lack of friends or success, but because of the impossibility of integrating these two facets of her identity. Professional fulfillment is not able to fill the existential void she carries. And the root of this suffering is the fear that her true self, the self that loves art and sensitivity, is not worthy of acceptance or love. This story reveals how the fear of rejection can imprison us and cause us to hide valuable parts of who we are. The path back to our true essence begins when we free ourselves from this internal prison, allowing our authenticity to resurface, first for ourselves and then for the world. We live in a world where we often sacrifice our spontaneity and uniqueness to gain external approval. The pressure to conform to others' expectations results in a gradual distancing from our essence, forcing our true self into an invisible shadow. However, this self does not disappear. It remains there, pulsating and eager for recognition. The more we ignore it, the more it manifests itself in distorted ways. Anxiety without apparent cause, constant irritability, and a deep sense that something is missing are reflections of this internal disconnection. The answer is not to eliminate the persona, as it has its adaptive role in our social interaction. The challenge is to make it more flexible, transparent, allowing the light of our genuine self to shine through it. This process of reintegration involves rescuing those parts of ourselves that we have left behind, those denied facets that have remained in the shadow of our social masks. The key is not to see the shadow as an enemy, but as an essential part of our wholeness. Within it lie hidden treasures of creativity, strength, and authenticity waiting to be rediscovered. Recognizing this dynamic is the first step on the journey back to oneself. The search for authenticity requires courage to question. Who am I behind all the masks I wear? What do I really feel, think, and desire? This longing for authenticity is not unique. It is one of the deepest human needs. We are not alone in this search. We all carry this inner restlessness waiting to be recognized in our entirety. Ignoring this loneliness, which stems from internal disconnection, for too long leads to painful consequences. When we continue to act without listening to what our soul is trying to tell us, we begin to suffer the physical and emotional manifestations of this distancing. This discomfort is not temporary. It is a condition that, if left unaddressed, can turn into a process of slow psychological decline. If you feel emotionally numb, as if life is being lived in dull tones, this may be a sign. Joy seems distant, sadness is muffled, and even anger loses its intensity. In this state, we are not really living. We are merely existing, watching our own lives as if they were a movie, without really participating in them. Although this is not necessarily clinical depression, it is the price paid for prolonged emotional repression. Another common symptom of this disconnection is the whirlwind of incessant thoughts. The mind tries unsuccessfully to resolve the discomfort it feels, but instead of finding peace, it enters a cycle of confusion. the mind begins to question, what's wrong with me? Why do I feel this way? We seek logical answers, but the real issue is not rational. Our suffering has spiritual and emotional roots. It cannot be resolved with more logic or productivity. We try to convince ourselves that the solution lies in being more grateful, more active, or even changing physical habits such as diet and exercise. However, it is not with logic or mental effort that we rescue our soul. True healing comes from reconnecting with our inner self, from the authentic expression of who we are. And this return cannot be forced. It requires acceptance and courage to look at the parts of ourselves that have been ignored. Trying to fix an out-of-tune instrument without even touching it, we remain in theory without solving what really matters. And when it comes to relationships, the story is the same. When we are distant from who we really are, we attract or maintain connections that also reflect this lack of inner harmony. We may surround ourselves with emotionally distant people, partners who connect with our facade, or friendships that deep down never go beyond the surface. We talk, but we don't feel that our words are echoed. They touch us, but they don't truly welcome us. We see, but we are not fully recognized. Jung pointed out that the greatest difficulty lies in accepting ourselves completely. Until that happens, we continue to engage with people who also cannot see our true selves. And in response, an incessant search for distractions arises. We spend hours scrolling through social media, binge-watching series that no longer hold our attention, engaging in shallow conversations, eating without appetite, buying on impulse, sleeping to escape. Silence, which could be a moment of reflection, becomes something frightening because it echoes the internal flaws that we do not want to face. The modern scenario, with its focus on ephemeral connections, non-stop productivity, and the obligation to always be positive, only deepens this emptiness. And the most disturbing thing is that, as this disconnection continues, we begin to sabotage our most intimate relationships. Not because we don't want them, but because we come to believe that we don't deserve something real and profound. Showing who we really are seems too dangerous. This is what we call self-annulment. We disappear from our own lives before the world has a chance to reject us. Have you ever wondered what would happen if you stopped running away from the emptiness you feel? What if instead you decided to confront it? Jung said that loneliness is not an enemy, but a tool. It shows us precisely where we have strayed from ourselves. It shows us the places where we deny our essence, the pieces of our soul that we hide, hoping to please others or ensure safety. When we finally stop constantly seeking distractions and validation, and accept the discomfort of the moment, something incredible can happen. We begin to hear a voice we haven't heard in a long time, the voice of our deepest self. It does not demand attention. It does not impose itself. It waits patiently until we have the courage to ask, what am I hiding from myself in order to be loved or simply to survive? This is the key to the process of individuation, a path to becoming whole. Whole, not perfect, not to impress, but simply complete. The real journey is not about becoming someone new, but about recovering who we always were before the world taught us to hide our essence. Individuation is the process of stopping trying to please others and starting to integrate all the parts of ourselves that have been marginalized, those that for some reason have been pushed away from the light of our consciousness. Here's the crucial point. The shadow is not simply the place where we store our weaknesses. It is also home to the most powerful aspects of who we are, our creativity, our passion, and our gifts, which at some point were considered dangerous or inappropriate. They are there, waiting to be rediscovered. Think of someone like Pedro. During his childhood, he was constantly called overly sensitive. which led him to repress his natural empathy and intuition in order to appear stronger, more in line with the standards of other boys. Even though he was successful in a logical career, Pedro felt that something was missing. The search for meaning led him to start therapy. It was by facing his shadow that Pedro was able to rescue a skill that had been suppressed, the ability to connect emotionally with others. This not only alleviated his loneliness, but also directed him to a new purpose. He became a therapist, helping others reconnect with their own hidden potentials. Individuation is accepting all parts of ourselves, including those we prefer not to show. Yes, I feel anger. Yes, I feel lonely. Yes, I have hidden myself away. This recognition changes the dynamic. Loneliness does not dissipate because we find the perfect tribe, but because we find something even deeper, ourselves. The meaning we seek does not come from being recognized by others, but from recognizing ourselves with clarity, honesty, and above all, kindness. True connection with others is only possible when we fully accept ourselves. At this point, we are no longer seeking approval. We no longer worry about the image we project. We are simply being. And it is this authenticity, free of masks, that heals loneliness, transforming it from something painful into a path of self-discovery and real connection. In the end, what really matters is not how much we manage to fit into external expectations, but how much we manage to rediscover and fully accept ourselves. The process of individuation is not a straight line. It is a continuous dance between light and shadow, between what we show to the world and what we keep to ourselves. True freedom comes when we stop incessantly seeking approval and start listening to the only voice that really matters, our own. And then, as we begin to see ourselves more honestly and compassionately, loneliness no longer seems like a threat. It becomes an ally, an opportunity to deepen our bond with ourselves, because, in the end, the most important relationship we have is with ourselves. It doesn't matter how isolated we feel or how distant others may seem. True love begins with inner acceptance. Only when we fully recognize and embrace ourselves without hiding who we are, can genuine connection with others flourish. The empty space we feel, so deep and disconcerting, can only be filled by our own presence. Ultimately, the crucial question is not, how can I connect with others, but how can I be more true to myself? The answer, as always, lies within us. When we allow ourselves to be whole without masks or false pretenses, the world around us becomes a reflection of what we now live with more truth and courage. This is how, in the end, we find true peace and true connection. If you were touched by this message and believe it's time to begin the journey of self-discovery, leave your comment below sharing what you've learned most. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more profound reflections like this one. We're in this together.